I would ask, how many men have you slept with? Not have you slept with men, how many?
A lot of the gay community we were outraged.
Women were finding their husbands with other men, or finding their boyfriends, or looking through phones and finding text messages and pictures from other men.
Like the upside of the down low, girl, bye.
WTV. Who's on this week? New York, LA, Chi-Town, DC, Atlanta, Miami. They know the D, and now the me. In New Orleans, in Tennessee. Come sing with me, they're watching 3LWTV. Come watch with me.
Welcome to 3LWTV. Have I got a special treat for you today? I am in the home of Miss Yolanda King Stephen, author of the very, very hot book, The Upside of the Down Low. As a prominent pastor's wife, Yolanda King Stephen was the envy of many in her public circle. However, when she discovered her husband's affair with a young male member of their church, it became nearly intolerable to address the betrayal and pain. From fear to faith, from tragedy to triumph, she speaks intimately of her experience in the compelling book, The Upside of the Down Low, a pastor's wife's memoir. I sat down with Yolanda King Stephen in her Georgia home for a very candid conversation about how she overcame hurt and conquered healing. I'd like to say welcome and thank you, Yolanda, for having me. Thank you for sending me your book. I just really appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thanks for taking and reading, and I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we could finally meet.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been to Columbus, so this has been interesting. Like I said, I was excited that there were paved roads and all you know.
Street lights, cars.
Your book, to me, really is not about the down low from the phenomenon that we've come to know from the hysteria of it. So why did you choose to call it The Upside of the Down Low?
Well, I believe there's an upside to everything in life, and there were so many down low things that happened within my marriage, including some of the things that we do know as the phenomenon, because if it's kept a secret, it's kept down low. But some of those things that are down low could be with finances, they could be with relationship issues, they can really be anything that you keep under wraps, that you don't share and communicate with your partner.
I want to get into a lot of the book because I don't want to give too much away, but there's so much juicy stuff that you crammed into like only 150 pages. It's like a quick read.
160, yes.
Okay, and
yes.
I felt like there's got to be more. There's more, but you really got a lot into it. But let's go back to, you grew up, your father was a preacher.
Yes, he's a pastor.
And so you were very much in the church life growing up, and then you marry a preacher.
Right.
And initially, but before you married him, you were a flight attendant.
Yes.
So you were kind of out in the world. So how did the preacher's kid actually get into flying?
Well, after I graduated college, I decided that I didn't want to do what was in my major. I majored in communication arts, but broadcasting with an emphasis, and I didn't want to do broadcasting. So after interning, decided I didn't like it. My mom said, you have to get a job somewhere. So the first thing I thought is, hey, I want to be free. I want to go out and see the world. I've lived in Georgia all my life. And so I decided to become a flight attendant. And I spent several years enjoying the position, the career, and just everything that it had to offer.
You do see a lot of the world, and you are in the world. And how did that gel with your religious upbringing?
Well, I still keep my morals and values and beliefs. They're still ingrained within me. And those things were the same as when I was flying. So it was just really the fun aspects of the job of seeing the world and meeting different people and learning from different cultures, because that's a lot of that. You're born in the South and ingrained in the South, and it's a lot of religious beliefs. So I wanted to see how other people live and how other places was, and that's what I was able to do as a flight attendant. I really appreciate that experience.
Okay, well then let's move a little forward.
Yes.
into meeting your husband, because he, in the beginning, it seemed like, from what I read, it seemed like he really kind of targeted you. I mean,
initiated the entire relationship, initiated us. When I met him, as in the book states, I met him in my mother's kitchen. And what better place? My mom introduced me to him, and he was the pastor of the church at the time. So I just moved back. He had recently moved back, and it was it was just a friendly meeting. It wasn't anything involved with it, and it was something that I didn't see as us progressing forward because he was a pastor and I was going to the club. So it wasn't anything that I saw progressing at the time. But as time moved on and I continued dating and realized that I don't just want to date, I want to be in a committed relationship, I started looking at him differently.
So now I know you were talking about how you guys had very long conversations in the beginning. Looking back now, do you think that was genuine, or do you think that he was being calculating from the beginning?
I mean, maybe a little bit of both. I think it was genuine, but I also think that there were things that we didn't discuss. And especially when going into a first marriage, your only marriage, you're thinking, and that's what I was thinking, when going into that, there were things that I didn't discuss or didn't think about to ask that would really impact the marriage. So if I could go back, I would ask some different questions.
Like, what would you ask him differently?
I would ask to sit down and write a financial budget. I would ask, how many men have you slept with? Not have you slept with men, how many? I would ask completely different questions. I would really get into the trust and the honesty and the communication and expectations of what's to take place within the marriage, where we want to see our long-term goals, how we want to be. We discuss how many children, but I would really delve into the heart of the matter.
Now, if a man answers that question honestly, how many men, not if, but how many men you slept with, would you really still marry that individual?
I probably would not. but it could still be a friendship that's formed. But everyone has their breaking point and things that they will and will not deal with in every situation, no matter whether it's a man or a woman. And that's something for me that I wouldn't necessarily want to deal with. So probably not.
And the reason I ask that is because I interview or I encounter a lot of bisexual men and women, and it's like they get no love. It's like from either side. It's like, yeah, especially if it's a man.
Either side of the fence. You pick which side you're on.
Right.
Yeah.
So because I'm on one side of the fence, you need to be on one side as well. So I that's the reason that I would ask that. I wonder if a man answers that honestly, would a woman really marry him?
I wouldn't. I would think twice about it. But there's somebody for everybody. You never know. You want to meet someone that's equally yoked and that enjoys the type of things that you enjoy. Not saying that everything has to be the same, because it doesn't. But when it comes down to sexuality and sexual preferences, it's extremely important in a marriage.
Wait, what would you say to somebody, I guess, that was maybe struggling with their sexuality and their religion?
I would say the first thing that's most important is to have a relationship with God. You have to know the word for yourself and know how it relates to your life. You have to have that relationship above all else, because if you listen to what other people say and what other people bring into your life or speak into your life, especially if they don't have your best interests at heart, it could be your ruin.
Okay. And kind of along those same lines with dating, and you talked about, which put a smile on my face when I was reading it, how he wanted to wait before becoming intimate sexually, and you didn't.
I didn't.
So now you holding up the that preacher's kid that stereotype.
I know, and it's such a stereotype. We preachers' kids, teachers' kids, we get a bad rap, but we're really not any different. It's just the higher level of expectation. But we're human. Right. We're human. And at that time, I was in my late 20s, and I had been sexually active. I had a child, brought a child into the marriage. And that was one of those things where, okay, this is the person that I'm going to marry, so I want to see what's going on here. But I respected the fact that he wanted to have a relationship with God, and that's the way it was presented to me. That he wanted to maintain this close relationship with God. He had just became pastor of the church, so he wanted to maintain that closeness with God. And if he did anything outside of that realm, he felt that it would ruin the relationship. And I wanted to respect that, because I respected him as my to-be husband and as my pastor.
Well, now, in light of all that you've experienced, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. I don't want to give too much away from the book because I want them to read it. But how do you see, just with society in general, how do we get back to like the true meaning of marriage? How do we get back to really respecting that institution when so many images out there are just full of foolishness?
The first thing I believe we need to do is communicate and be honest. We need to be honest about the expectations of marriage. There are a lot of articles, there are a lot of things that you can read, the 10 steps to a happy marriage, the 7 steps to pleasing your man. But those things aren't evergreen. You are a man, I'm a woman. You may like different things, and I may like different things. That's not called upon in that article. So you have to get back to the basics. You have to communicate. That is so important. And you have to know the expectations when you're stepping into that marriage. Because if you know what you're getting into, you're not surprised when those little nuances come up. If someone tells you, I'm not good with finances, you won't be surprised if they bounce a check. So it's those different type of things there, as opposed to saying, oh, well, I make such and such amount of money, but you don't say how you spend that money, how that money will be spent throughout the marriage. It's okay to say, oh, I've had sexual partners in the past, but not the type of intercourse that you like with that person or that you like to carry on with that person, because it's very important in a marriage. It really is in any relationship.
Wow. How do you feel about gay marriage?
Well, I believe the Bible. I have faith in the Bible. I believe every word in the Bible. And it says that a marriage is between a man and a woman. A man who findeth a wife findeth the good thing. And that's my belief. Whereas I don't shun anyone for their own personal beliefs, that's mine.
Okay, I can respect that. We often hear that, you must submit or you should submit to your man. How did it make you feel when your husband tells you that you're going to move in with his mom after who you didn't necessarily have the best energy with, right, after 3 weeks of marriage?
It was a very interesting time, because whereas you should submit to your husband, but first you should submit to God, who will help make that relationship what it's supposed to be, both people in the marriage. I felt that I needed to submit in a way and to help move the marriage along, but I also knew that it needed to be us two. We didn't need to have anyone else in our relationship as we were building our marriage. It was to be built between us, because I wasn't expecting mama, brother, sister, cousin, grandmama to be there throughout the marriage. We needed to find our own way, what worked for us and what didn't.
So enter the picture Jose.
Yes.
So Jose starts coming to your house regularly, starts staying there regularly, and it seemed like you had some inclination that something wasn't right, but why didn't you choose to trust your instincts?
I trusted my instincts as far as telling my husband, because he was the head of the household. I didn't feel like I needed to take that to anyone else. So I trusted him to handle it the way he saw fit. And he felt the way to deal with it is to mentor the young man, because I did feel that there was something just not quite right, but you don't want to step on anyone's toes or push anyone away if they're not going on the right path. You want to help them along. That's internally the person that I am. So I didn't want to shun or push him away. My husband said that he was mentoring him, and I took that as it was. I trusted his word, and whereas I still had maybe a little something deep down within, I didn't know what it was. And in any relationship, you don't go and end a relationship or keep picking at it like you're picking at a scar until it's just blooded over about one particular thing, unless you have concrete facts. And for me, I didn't have concrete facts except just my woman's intuition. This is my intuition, and this is what I feel. So from there, it took a different turn.
But people at church were gossiping about it.
Later on.
Okay, so they became suspect about the relationship, but you still didn't seem to want to necessarily acknowledge it, especially, and I can understand not wanting to get with the busy Bettys who are in your business.
Mm-hmm.
But
no, there's plenty of them. Not everyone's like them, but there's plenty of them. When the gossiping started, nobody gossiped to me. It was through word of mouth. He said, she said, that I heard, and I was sitting next to her who said this. So you really can't go on that, and that can't be the foundation of what you base your decision or your relationship on, or if it's going to the next level or if it's going to end. And that wasn't enough for me, the he said, she said. I needed concrete evidence. And I would have done the same thing if it was a woman.
So you don't think you were kind of in denial, like kind of thinking maybe, well...
At one point I was. At one point I was in denial, because I had accepted this young man into my home. He had sat on my couch. He ate food in my kitchen. And I accepted him as one of my own. We went shopping together at the mall. helped him with schoolwork, whatever was needed. And I accepted him. So from that aspect, I said, this cannot be, because I know this person. I trust this person. Whereas he may have problems and my husband may have problems. I may have problems. But I'm not just going to kick him out because of this. It has to be something else. And when you see the signs of someone cheating, you don't think about who it is. You may have your eye on one particular person, but it may not be that person. You just know that they're not acting right in the relationship.
So what signs did you see initially? I mean, not that you would not look at Jose because you didn't suspect him, but what changed in the marriage that kind of made you think, well, something else might be going on with your husband?
Mm-hmm. The intimacy in relationship, the staying out late. Those were the top two things. Very, very protective of the phone. Very protective. It's in the pocket or it's in the car. If you sleep, it's in the car. So it was those sort of activities and acts that made me very suspect of what was going on.
Now, earlier you mentioned that you have a daughter that you had before that you brought into the marriage.
Yes.
Tell me, what will you teach her about men?
I'll let her read the book. When she gets old enough, I'll let her read the book. Right now, she thinks boys who hit, like physically hit or play around, that those are the ones that likes you. I have to tell her, no, the boys who like you don't hit you. I have to teach her about love. I have to teach her about the love of God. I have to teach her that she has to make decisions for herself, that mommy's not going to always be there to help her make decisions or to turn to at some point in time, that she has to follow her gut, follow her instinct. She has to communicate. She has to ask questions. There's so many different things that I want to teach her to make sure that she has open eyes, that she goes in with open eyes. And prayerfully, I'll be able to do that.
Did your experience with your husband, did that change at all or alter your perception of your dad, who was also a minister?
Oh, no. My dad is my dad. Even if he wasn't a minister, he's my dad. So the things that him and my mom instilled in me in no way affected what happened between us. Even though it wasn't a fairy tale ending, it wasn't a happy ending, it never affected my relationship with my father, my thoughts of my father. It never did that.
Okay. Well, I would love to know what you thought of the Eddie Long scandal.
I get that so often, but the day the Eddie Long scandal broke, I wasn't really into it because I was going through what I was going through. I couldn't say, oh, well, there goes another one. I couldn't say that because I was stuck in my own healing. So for me, I didn't really get into the whole Eddie Long situation. What I did, though, after it continuously came on the news and continuously different things kept on coming out, I just kept praying because I don't know them. I don't know them. But what I could do was pray that whatever happened, whatever the situation was, that everyone was safe and the decisions that were made for all in their best interest.
What would you offer for advice to Mrs. Long?
Well, for advice, it would be kind of hard and kind of difficult for me because in a way, we kind of share the same thing as far as the allegation. I mean, not as many of the allegations came out, but the way it's seeming like in the news that it's playing out differently than what mine played out. And I don't even feel right saying, oh, you should leave, just get away and go and do you. That's not the type of advice that I can give because that's not what I did. I can't say, oh, you should leave. What I can say is you can pray because you know your situation. You know what's best for you and your family. You know what's going to make you sane. You know what's going to make you whole. You know what's going to just make you feel relieved at the end of the day when you go look in the mirror. And whatever that decision is, that's the one you make.
What would you say to somebody, a member of New Birth?
Well, that's when your discernment with God comes into play. If you are led to stay, stay. And one thing that I was taught as a little girl, you don't just follow just the church. You just don't go where the church goes. The church tells you to go left. Oh, I'm going to go left. Church tells you to go right. Oh, I'm going to go right today. You follow the discernment within you because the church is within you. If you feel like you should stay, stay. If you feel like you should go, go.
How are you able to still trust men? Or are you?
It's a difficult process, and not just men, anyone, because when you have a tragedy like I did in my life, you find out who the people are that are around you. If they are for you, if they are against you, if they just want to be there to spread the word like the gossiping Bettys.
Right.
And you want to make sure that you know who's around you. So for me, it's not about just about trust. It's about making sure that the core people who are in my circle and the core people around me know the type of person that I am and have my best interest at heart, because at some point I still am fragile, but I know I have to go out into that world. I have to live, and I have to raise children that I teach them to trust. But I also teach them not to trust too much to where you're being taken advantage of. So I have to get back to that place where I can do the same thing. And I receive help from my mom. I moved her in. She hadn't moved out yet. We stay up all night watching YouTube videos. But, I mean, there are people around me who definitely help in that process. And I did get counseling. I had to seek counseling because it was so much that was going on. And I know in the Black community, we say a lot. No, you don't need it. Just read the Bible and pray and be vigilant and you'll be okay. Sometimes you need counseling. And I did. And I wasn't afraid to seek it. I wasn't afraid to seek it for me or for my daughter.
If you could go back to the day that your husband came to your house to eat and noticed your physique. I remember you were talking about that because he was like,
Yes.
and she's got it banged. She's got it going on. If you could go back to that day, what would you change if you could change anything?
I wouldn't change anything. I look good. I wouldn't change anything because it was our initial meeting. So as far as meeting him and knowing who he was, I didn't know who he was, and I wouldn't have known in that amount of time. And a lot of times when we meet someone, we see them physically, and you have to be attracted to them physically as well. So I wouldn't change a thing.
When the whole download phenomenon broke, it really got sensationalized on the Oprah Winfrey Show with J.L. King's first appearance. Mm-hmm. What is your take on the national hysteria that was created behind the download phenomenon?
I think it created a dialogue. When everything came out and when J.L. King was on Oprah, I was in college. So I watched it like, oh, what is this? I've never heard of this before. And my friends and I really gathered around and we talked about it. We purchased the book. We talked about the book. And it was something that we talked about and just dropped but kept in the back of our minds. And it wasn't one of those things where I felt like I needed to talk about that with my future boyfriends or my future husband. I didn't feel that was a necessary conversation. But what it did was definitely open up a dialogue for people to talk about it. And if you felt that you were in that situation or feel like you're in it now, you can talk about it at least with your friends or go read. I know some people try to find signs. What is signs, girl? What signs did you see? Sometimes you don't see signs. Right. You just have to keep on going. But he brought about that dialogue when he first came out with the book and was on Oprah. It was really astounding.
Because a lot of the gay community we were outraged, like, and not just with JL, mm-hmm. even though he was there telling his story, but just the way it was framed on the Oprah episode. We were just over them all, like, okay, now here we go, you know.
Another can of worms and another thing we have to deal with. But really, I feel it was more so for women because we didn't see it that way. And if you are in a situation where your husband or your boyfriend is on the down low, and you wouldn't believe how many calls after I just announced that the upside of the download was coming out, that I was writing the story, so many women called. So many people called and thanked me just for writing, and they hadn't even read a word because they felt that it needed to get out. Women were finding their husbands with other men or finding their boyfriends or looking through phones and finding text messages and pictures from other men. It's something that created a dialogue, not to open up a can of worms, but to make us aware of the things that are going on, the questions that we need to ask to have honest communication between the sexes.
Putting myself in your shoes as a woman, how do you really nurture a healthy relationship with being cognizant that that's a possibility that this man could be on download, but without suspecting him or pressuring him or, guilty until proven innocent?
If he's not honest about it, you can't, because it has to be known. You have to know what you're working with. And a lot of times we'll hear that said, well, I just have to know what I'm working with. If I would have known, then I would have known how to deal with the situation. If it's not honest communication, you really can't work with it, because it's based on lies, it's based on dishonesty, and then the trust is gone. And you cannot rebuild trust when there are still lies and dishonesty floating underneath. But if it's something that you do know and you choose to work with it, you just have to work that out within yourself and communicate with that other person, because you may be okay with it.
So why did God bring this man into your life and bring this experience into your life?
I asked myself that question so many times, to the point of where I was aching. I was never mad at God or never upset, but I was aching. How did this happen? Why did this happen to me? Lord, what do you want me to do with this? And part of that was to share my story, to create that dialogue that we don't talk about, because number one, pastors are put up here, especially in the South, in our community. They're put up here. And not to bring anybody down, but to say this is a real situation that people deal with, even pastors. I think that was part of it, and then also to strengthen my relationship with God. Because if you notice, at the beginning of the Upside of the Down Low, I was getting ready to go to the club. By the end of the Upside of the Down Low, I had this prayer life. I had this stronger connection, and I was able to go through this storm without being a storm for anybody else. It also taught me about who my true friends are, who my family is, and the people that have my best interests at heart, because no matter what, you need to have somebody in your corner. You need to have somebody's shoulder you can cry on, because God is not physically here, but the people that he places in your life, that can be that physical person, your mom or your dad, or a great friend that you can trust, that helps bring that closeness that you can cry on the shoulder and get something out. Right. And talking about it really does help.
Everything kind of took place here in Columbus.
Yes.
And you still live in Columbus.
Yes.
Does Jose still live in Columbus?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so you don't have any type of connection or...
No connections. I mean, the streets talk, but
what do they say?
Oh, they say a whole lot when you put your ear real close down. But nothing concrete where I would know exactly if he still lived here or if he lived elsewhere. Just like some other people in the book.
Have you forgiven them?
I've forgiven, and I had to forgive, and I say that so easily because at a point I didn't. At a point, I did not forgive. It was very difficult for me to forgive because I felt they had turned their backs on me. I felt it was a Judas situation. You know what I'm going through, and you're going to do this? I just felt betrayed. And I had to get over that betrayal. I had to get over that trust factor. And it could be a coping mechanism that I just stay at arm's length.
Have you forgiven yourself?
Yeah, because I didn't feel I did too much wrong. But I know at this point that it's what God wanted to happen, because it happened. But in the grand scheme of things, I tried to be the best wife I could, even though I know I didn't do everything right and everything perfect. But I tried to be the best wife that I could.
Well, what is the intent behind releasing the book? What do you want us as readers to get from it?
That no matter what, there's always an upside to your situations, because it may not be a relationship, it may be a job. It may not be a marriage, it may be just you're with your partner. And no matter what storms you go through, whether they're finances, you can always get through them. You don't necessarily have to take the easy way out, or what some people may feel the easy way out. You just have to hold it together, stand still, because God's going to give you the answers, because it's going to be what he wants it to be anyway. So there's always an upside. Keep looking up and you'll get it.
So what is the upside for Yolanda King Stephen?
You got to read the book. I know you've already read it. I know you've already read it, but you have to read the book.
In all that you've been through thick and thin, now, given where you are now, what do you know for sure?
I know for sure that I can be still and that God is going to be with me. I know for sure that I want to raise my kids to be honest and to be able to communicate with me and other people that they're around. I know for sure that my mom, my dad, my sister, my family is going to be there for me as much as they can. And I know for sure that I want to continue to live and to keep living a healthy life and to live a peaceful life. That's what I know for sure. And I know it's there, or else I wouldn't have gotten through the situation.
Wow. Well, Yolanda, I want to thank you again because it's just such a powerful testimony, and just for reaching out to 30WTV. Because, like I said, when I first saw the title, I was like, the upside of the download, girl, bye. I'm like, I'm done, but this is not the download channel. And but in my spirit, it said, take a look at it, read it, and I was just blown away by the power of your testimony. And the book is featured on 30WTV.com. There's an Amazon link which you can purchase the book. So definitely support Yolanda. The Upside of the Down Low, a pastor's wife's memoirs. I always get those subtitles. They're always tongue twisters.
They are, but they're fun.
So again, thank you so much for being a part of 30WTV. This will be the featured selection, so please support it. And what I love about the book also is in the back there are questions, so you can have, if you have a book club or just discussion questions that can be generate a wonderful, incredible conversation. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Continue success with the book. I'm so proud of it and proud of you.
Thank you. Can I say one?
Yes.
With book clubs, I get a lot of calls from book clubs and a lot of speaking opportunities to come out and talk about overcoming obstacles, or even to discuss the book via phone or via Skype, or even if I can be there. So those are different things that I like to share with my readers, because you learn so much. You never know. The last line in the book says you don't know what's going to happen to the upside to life after. That's what I have to see. That's what I'm living now. That's what I hope to share in the future.
Perfect. Thank you. Again, I want to thank my very special guest, Yolanda King Stevens, The Upside of the Down Low. I'm Lonell Williams. Thank you for choosing 30WTV. Always stand in your light.